So continue with our series of Ask a Politician as this morning we look at the party that has made inroads in provinces like KwaZulu-Natal since its formation last year. The party is one of the new entrants in the 2024 May polls. Umkhonto weSizwe has been in and out of court as well since its inception. But this morning we reflect on the plans that the party has for South Africa. Joining us now is MK Party's economic policy expert, Dr. Thanti Mthanti, who's joining us in studio. Dr. Mthanti, good morning. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Morning, Aldrin. Happy to be here.
And we're happy to have you as well. I'm going to start off with some current affairs issues, and then we're going to deal with the manifesto. So, following the Constitutional Court judgment, has the party decided who will then replace former President Jacob Zuma?
Replace him?
This is now on the list, on the candidate list from the national candidate list to the National Assembly.
President Zuma will remain our choice for president. He remains our choice for president, and he'll be sworn in as the next country's president.
But there was a Constitutional Court judgment that said that he's not eligible to stand.
Yeah,
so I'm asking on that particular basis.
The judgment is there.
Yeah.
The judgment is there, but to some degree, the people are sovereign. There are other instruments to deal with the issue, constitutionally so. If we win the election, President Zuma will...
How so? Just explain that to me.
Constitutionally.
Okay, yeah, how?
President Zuma can be pardoned, and he can assume his seat in the national...
But he would be pardoned by another president, right? He would have to be pardoned by another president.
Yes, but I'm saying if we win the election, President Zuma will sit in the National Assembly and he'll stand for election.
But there would have to be a president that is elected who would then have the power to pardon him first.
We'll go through the mechanics. I'm saying constitutionally, the decision of the Constitutional Court does not bar President Zuma from assuming the presidency. The mechanics of who pardons him, how he pardons him, how he takes up his seat, how he takes his oath of office will play out. I'm just saying the Constitutional Court made its decision.
Yeah.
It just said basically sentencing a person without their fair trial rights, right, bars them from contesting for a National Assembly seat. That's what they've done. That's what they've done. They've made that decision. That decision is final to that extent.
Yeah.
But like I say, there are other instruments that can be used.
Okay, maybe let's do it this way. Explain to us what happens after the 29th of May if the MK Party...
I'm just saying the process is...
How would it happen?
The processes will roll out, but President Zuma can assume the presidency. What I'm here to do is to assure the people who want to vote for him is that President Zuma can assume the presidency and he can do so constitutionally. It's not against our constitution for him to do so. It can be done. He can do so constitutionally.
Right now he can't, right?
Yeah, but right now it's until 5 days.
Yeah.
He can't be on the list as the Constitutional Court has decided.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm just saying MK wins the election on the 29th. President Zuma can take up a seat in the National Assembly.
So that's what I'm trying to get. What's the mechanics of it? How does it work?
I indicated to you that there can be a pardon.
Okay, let's speak about the first sitting of Parliament. It's now the first sitting of Parliament. Then what happens?
Look, let the mechanics play out.
Those are the mechanics that I'm trying to understand.
What's your explanation? The major issue I'm saying to you, and nobody can dispute this, nobody can dispute it, is MK wins this election. President Zuma can assume his place in the National Assembly. Yeah. So to everyone who wants President Zuma in that National Assembly, go out and vote in large numbers. And if we win this election, he will legally and constitutionally so assume his seat in the National Assembly, and he will be eligible to be elected as the country's next president.
Care to explain to us what the mechanics are that will play out after...
Look, I'm saying the mechanics of how it works out. We all know that any offender in the country can be pardoned.
Yeah.
And that pardon...
By the president.
By a president.
Yeah.
That pardon will negate whatever.
The conviction, yeah.
Whatever conviction they have. And with that pardon, they can assume their role in a National Assembly or on a party's list, and they can be full members of society. The key issue here is for us to win the majority. There's no such that President Zuma can't be in the National Assembly. Yeah. He is a citizen with full rights.
Yeah.
Irrespective of what the Constitutional Court thinks, because in this country there seem to be Zuma laws, right? Irrespective of what the Constitutional Court thinks, ultimately the people are sovereign. We decide matters in this country on the basis of the vote. Go out and vote in your large numbers, and President Zuma will return to office.
Would this have been a discussion that you've had with other political parties if the MK party doesn't get the two-thirds majority?
I think right now the major issue, it's not even, you don't even need two-thirds to get to that. MK is trying to win this election.
Yeah.
We need to win
Dr.
this election.
I'm trying to get to the point around the election of the president, because for the powers to be exercised to pardon somebody, there must be a president in place, right? And even before...
Let me entertain that debate, Aldrin. If MK wins the election, which president will assume power?
Yes.
It will be an MK president.
Okay, it will be an
MK president. Can that
MK
MK president not pardon President Zuma?
Okay, so that MK
I'm saying, can they not? You seem to say it's an outlandish possibility that cannot happen.
No, not at all. So that's why that's the reason
that's why I'm saying our issue
Yeah.
is to win this election and get President Zuma into office.
Okay, so MK party will then elect a president.
Our
and that
issue is to win these elections and get President Zuma back into office.
Okay. Let's see how that is going to play out. Then the other issue is just clarity on this. When the MK party, when former President Jacob Zuma announced that he will be voting for the MK party on December the 16th, he did state that he remains a member of the ANC and he wasn't a member of the MK party. I assume by becoming a leader of the MK party, as the electoral court, as the electoral commission has confirmed as well, it means that now he is a member of the MK party, right?
I suppose that's self-explanatory.
Okay. So during that launch again, he says that I'll be a member of the ANC until I die, but if the ANC goes out of the way, I will take time to correct it. And this is to rescue the ANC, what I'm doing. So basically what he's doing by voting for the MK party and supporting the MK party is trying to rescue the ANC. But that was when he wasn't a member of the MK party. Now that he is a member of the MK party, is that still the mission? To rescue the ANC?
Well, I think more broadly to rescue the country and to return to the ANC's original mission, which was to liberate this country, the reason why it was formed. Our liberation is not really complete, yes? Our liberation is not really complete. I think the MK party is very clear on issues around land, on nature.
So it's no longer to rescue the ANC?
Look, I'm saying the original mission of the ANC is quite crucial, right? The MK party is out to win elections, to liberate South Africans, which was the original mission. We achieved a degree of political liberation, right? But even politically to some degree, right, we are finding out that it's got some perverse outcomes, right? Economically, I think one can pretty much state the situation with black people is dire, right? Our liberation is not complete. So we, as the MK,
are taking up the historical mission of the ANC.
Taking up that historical mission.
So the mission is no longer to rescue the ANC?
We are taking up the historical mission of the ANC.
Yeah, but Dr. Mthanti, the question is, so the mission is no longer to rescue the ANC, because the way the former president sold the idea was that vote for the MK party with the purpose of rescuing the ANC?
To some degree, I think that's already happening because the ANC members are joining MK in droves. Okay. And they are understanding the historical mission of the ANC. The ANC is being crushed pretty much throughout the country. ANC members, right?
Okay.
New people are joining MK in droves. But I think MK is really pursuing the historical mission that the ANC has abandoned.
Okay, and we'll speak about some of those historical missions that the ANC has abandoned according to the MK party. Do stay tuned for that conversation. And remember that we're also asking you to send through your questions that you have for the MK party, and we'll have Dr. Mthanti respond to those. That's the number there on your screen, 072 110 5584, 072 110 5584. Any questions that you have for the MK party after this short break. And welcome back. We continue with Ask a Politician in conversation this morning with the MK party's economic policy expert, Dr. Thanti. And remember, we're also taking your questions this morning that you may have for the MK party. So do send through those questions and we'll ask Dr. Mthanti to respond to those. Just finally from this point, and then we move into some of the manifesto proposals. Where does the MK party stand currently around the conversation on coalitions?
It's not something we've entertained at all, because the main focus is to win the election.
Yeah.
I think there are two parties that can win the election. One, it's MK, the other one is potentially the ANC. Our focus is to defeat the ANC and win the election. And it's just really that simple. And that ideally happen. Get a two-thirds majority. Ideally, well, look, I think winning the election is very highly likely. It's highly likely. Yes.
By two-thirds?
Well, I'm saying let's start with winning. Yeah. Winning the election, let's start with winning. Winning the election, winning the election at 50% plus one is very likely. It's not some outlandish possibility, contrary to the propaganda of the polls that have been released.
Have you won any by-elections? Have you won any by-elections?
That hasn't been the focus.
Okay.
That hasn't been the focus.
So we can't use that as a test whether resources, the MK party is...
Yes, there have been no resources really channeled to by-elections, right? But when you look at it, President Zuma is a national figure with national name recognition. MK is very strong in very populous provinces. KZN, Eastern Cape, Mpumalanga, Gauteng, and a few others, even some pockets of Mpumalanga. Those provinces constitute the majority of the voters in this country. President Zuma, number 2, has virtually universal name identification throughout the country, contrary to people who try to characterize, and the ANC has done this, try to characterize MK as a KZN party. It's not a KZN party. President Zuma didn't govern this country as a tribalist. He governed this country as a patriot. He invested in rural provinces pretty much throughout the country. There was no KZN that was privileged. And people in the deep rural areas, in the townships of this country, know how they benefited under his rule. And they are going to come out and vote. And they're going to vote for him. We're going to see the phenomenon of the silent Zuma vote.
The silent Zuma vote.
The silent Zuma vote. People, grandmothers in the villages, right, who know how the cost of living has changed, who know how they've been ignored by this government, who've suffered under load shedding, water shedding.
He was president at the time during that load shedding as well.
When? When?
Former President Jacob Zuma was...
how much load shedding was there and when?
Well, there was load shedding in 2000, 2009. I think there was load shedding as well.
In 2009, there was load shedding in 2007 before he became president. There was load shedding in 2015, which he stopped.
Was he still president?
He was president, he stopped it. In 2007, he wasn't president. Yeah, he stopped it. From 2015 until he departed 2018 February, there was no load shedding. And the scale of load shedding was nothing like we've suffered over the last 6 years.
So there was load shedding. There was some. Okay, not to this particular extent that we.
Not to this extent. There was no water shedding.
Yeah.
Yes, there was no water shedding, and crucially, we didn't have this sort of cost of living crisis, inflation, that has happened over the last 5 years. This has been a disastrous government. Grandmothers, people buying food, they can't afford potatoes. They've shot up through the roof. Price of bread, price of fish oil, it has shot up through the roof. The degree of economic mismanagement under this government, it is just stunning.
Okay, let's quickly go to your policy proposals. Pillar number 4, reclaiming our economy. The current government's IMF-backed economic reconstruction and recovery plan focuses on cutting human capital and research and development spending and privatizing of state-owned enterprises. But you also say here it is supported by COSATU unions, prioritizing easing labor market reforms, which will negatively impact workers. How does the MK party understand the role that COSATU is playing in diminishing those particular rights that workers have?
COSATU basically talks left and walks right. It supports very regressive policies of the ANC that are to the disadvantage of workers, partially because their leaders are just trying to position themselves for government posts, right? They do not represent their members' interests. Instead, they are representing themselves. Mm-hmm. There's no left movement that can support structural adjustment policies that are being implemented by this government.
Where did this happen? Does the MK know where COSATU's stance changed? Because at some point, for instance, COSATU was amongst the federation, or was a federation that was supporting former President Jacob Zuma in his quest.
I think we, for example, highlight there that economic reconstruction and recovery plan is a neoliberal plan. Mm-hmm. It's focused on trying to achieve some primary surplus, principally through cutting social spending or spending on budgets. In real terms, spending on health, on education, even on policing has been cut over the last 6 years, right? Both in real terms on a per capita basis. Right? Okay. It's been cut in real terms. Mm-hmm. Not only that, there's a focus on privatization and what they call structural reforms. Structural reforms, it's on the basis that the market provides efficiency. They want to allow the operating of market principles, principally in water, in logistics, in energy, and in telecommunications. So what does that mean? It means price will basically become the primary determinant of how, for example, water is allocated or electricity is allocated, right? And it's got to be on some cost-reflective basis. It's got to be guided by market principles. Yeah. And that means people who don't have the money won't get those services. What does price mean?
Mm-hmm. And the Giyani Water Project was also launched during former President Jacob Zuma's tenure. It hasn't been completed.
Those are administrative issues within the government, and they were within the ANC.
So how would the MK party ensure that all of those things are tightened? Because the money is then made available for some of these projects, and then the money disappears.
I think the president has clarified that the members of the executive of the party will not be in parliament and in government. They'll be overseeing the work that is done. Yeah. So there'll be greater oversight over ministerial portfolios to ensure that work is executed.
Okay, let's quickly take this question that is coming in from one of our viewers this morning. Hi, my name is Ronnie from Soweto. My question is, if MK party wins the election, are we going to see the return of the Gupta mafias?
I don't know how the MK party is associated with the Gupta mafias.
Yeah, I think it's probably because of state capture and the findings of State Capture Commission of Inquiry and linking it to former President Jacob Zuma.
If you place much value in that.
Yeah.
I mean, if you place much value in that report, I don't think it's come out. It's been out for quite a period of time.
Quite some time, yeah.
President Zuma has been out of office for 6 years, right? If indeed there were criminal activities that he was associated with, why haven't they prosecuted him? I mean, that state capture report, how much weight does the NPA place on it?
Because they're also doing their
Who has been successfully prosecuted out of it?
None that we know of.
I think that answers the question about the quality of the report and what the objectives of that report were.
Okay. This question here from Begim Sana says, what's your take as the MK party about the comments made by ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa saying he's not scared of the MK party and that they will win the elections by 51%?
He's not scared, and he's been trying so hard to disrupt it and destroy it in every way he can. How many times has there been a new party that has been taken to court as much? Well, has there been a party where even supposedly independent bodies like the Constitutional Court and the IEC are seemingly engaged directly in electoral interference? I think that's...
Are you saying the Constitutional Court is interfering?
Yes.
How?
I mean, they just issued a decision, did they not? Barring President Zuma from being on the parliamentary list.
The IEC took the matter to the Constitutional Court.
It was very interesting with that case. The IEC appealed a judgment that had not been issued. The Constitutional Court agreed to hear an appeal on a judgment that had not been issued. What was the logical basis of that?
Yeah, there was some criticism to that as well. Yeah. Even I think it's Professor Mogobo in the judgment actually, who says that the pressure that came with having to now do make sure that the judgment is done because now that the directive has been issued by the Constitutional Court.
But what was the objective of that?
So are you saying on that particular basis the Constitutional Court is...
The only reason that case was being taken up, right, before a judgment is even issued, was to ensure that the president does not appear on the parliamentary list and to deny ordinary South Africans their right to choose him as their leader if they so choose. If that is not electoral interference, what is electoral interference?
What happens to the judiciary after the MK party is elected?
I think our manifesto is very clear that one of the things we seek to do is to move away from constitutional supremacy to parliamentary sovereignty. I think it's very clear that's not something we are hiding. But, you know, with this case and the judgments I mean, there are a lot of ridiculous judgments that have been issued against President Zuma. That's why a lot of people say there's a Zuma law in this country. There are a lot of ridiculous judgments. But this one partially takes the case. Who hears an appeal without the judgment? Who agrees to hear it? Unless they've got a particular objective, which is to make sure that they can hear the case as quickly as possible because they wish to issue a particular judgment that serves whoever's interest. So
it was predetermined, you say?
Well, I'm saying it appears that way. I think for every South African, in my view, should be highly concerned when our highest court agrees to hear an appeal that has no judgment.
Okay, doing away with the Roman Dutch law and also having African law, what does it mean?
It means to infuse African law. Our African law was largely restorative, and legal scholars will deal with this, right? If somebody erred or whatever, they were fined, they were punished in certain ways, right? It was not just based on incarceration. And we did not have as much criminality. Obviously, for serious matters, some degree more punitive measures are needed. But it's to have a legal system partially based on our own culture and on our values, right? and that legal scholars can infuse into our legal system.
Yeah.
We need a society in general.
In the Roman Dutch law that the MK party says that this is a problem, and it is very regressive in terms of the policies that we want to...
There are just certain things that are obvious. I mean, a mother steals baby formula because their child is hungry, and they are incarcerated, and fined, and their high bail is put up. How many people are in South African prisons for petty crimes, where restorative justice may have been more appropriate?
Yeah, I think, but there is case law around that where the courts are actually speaking to that particular point.
They are, but I'm saying our culture, our law has to be more infused into our system. Yeah. On an economics view, for example, in Japan, the Japanese, different from law, the Japanese companies generally tend to shy away from firing workers because of their culture. They would rather somebody comes to work and doesn't do a lot. They just shy away from firing workers. I don't think when you look at the business media, you find Japanese companies are retrenching so much, are retrenching so much, are retrenching so much. That's because their culture is infused into their institutions and into how their country functions. Okay. That is not the case here.
Another question here from Lubisi TT says, Dr. Mthanti, how will the MK party deal with load shedding after the elections?
Pretty similar to how the president dealt with it before and how he wanted to end it for good. And it's very clear in our manifesto. You need to invest in Eskom's coal fleet and make sure that it is properly maintained. If it is properly maintained, the energy availability factor will increase. On a longer term, and to mitigate against climate change, South Africa needs base load. Instead of concentrating on renewable energy and wind power, the main focus will be on investing in nuclear power. Yeah.
What do you make of what some pundits are saying, that especially when it comes to the impact of climate change, but the health concerns that there are for people, especially who live in provinces such as Mpumalanga? From the emissions.
The health concerns are there, and they've been there for some time, which is why you will gradually move your base load away from coal to nuclear. South Africa needs base load power. Our industry is, and our competitive advantage as a country, is based on reliable and cheap energy. Large furnaces can't run on solar and wind power. We can't beneficiate minerals using solar and wind power. We need reliable baseload energy.
Yeah, so what's the response then to that health part?
The health part, is it there with nuclear?
Excuse me?
Is it there with nuclear?
No, I'm saying currently.
No, I'm saying...
because remember that the party is also saying that do away with the unjust transition.
With the unjust transition, yes. The transition is unjust. That is what we say, and it is unjust in so many ways, partially because of the spillover effects. It's destroying our energy-intensive manufacturing sector, right? Besides the jobs that it destroys around the coal mines, right? In our view, you need to maintain the existing coal mines, so there's no need to shut them down and close them, right? But at the same time, you need to build more reliable baseload power, and that can happen through nuclear power.
Okay. This question here from Dennis Mudise says, how does the MK party differentiate itself from other parties, and what are the party's long-term goals or aspiration for the future of South Africa? But open-ended there, but your response to that?
How do we differentiate ourselves? I think by highlighting the return to really foundational issues. That number one, we are African. We need to center ourselves around our culture and our ways, our own spirituality. These things have been handed down to us over thousands of years by our ancestors. Their accumulated knowledge, right, handed down from generation to generation. They define who we are. We can't function optimally in institutions, right, in governance systems, in economic institutions that don't reflect who we are.
Yeah.
We have taken on, it's like taking the Chinese or the Japanese or the Arabs and making them function as Westerners and run their countries as Westerners. That's exactly what has happened to us as Africans.
Yeah. So as a political party, and you're in a very different space to other political parties because you have somebody like former President Jacob Zuma, who you also described as being quite popular, but he has been in the system. He was the president before. Do you ask him why those things were unachievable during his 9-year tenure as the president of the country, and even during the time when he was the ANC's president? Why was it unachievable?
Aldrin, that's fairly simple. I think you do understand our system and how it functions. You do. We don't have an executive presidency.
Sorry?
We don't have an executive presidency. Yeah. We don't have a directly elected president. So you didn't have a Zuma administration. You had an ANC administration. And the ANC itself was a contested party. We work on a parliamentary system, right? The president can be recalled on the basis of 50 plus 1 vote.
And you can defend the president as well if there's a motion of no confidence.
Yeah, you can. Yeah. But I'm saying Zuma was an ANC president implementing ANC policies. What you should ask more clearly is why has he left the ANC?
Because well, he says he hasn't left the ANC.
Well, I'm saying why has he formed MK?
Oh.
Why has he taken up the spear? Mm-hmm. Because he fundamentally disagrees with the policies that the ANC is implementing. He disagrees with austerity. So it's very difficult to say to somebody, okay, you are taking this radical decision of picking up the spear, right? So why didn't you do it when you're there? Is that even really a serious question? Because he was constrained when he was there.
Well, he had 9 motions of no confidence, which he was able to defeat through the power of that particular ANC.
But does it mean he could implement all the policies he wanted as an ANC president?
Okay, Dr. Mthanti, thank you so much for your time.
Dr.
Mthanti is the head of economic policy there at MK Party.